there, my name's Dawn. I was born on December the 6th, 1964, and this is going to be my childhood memories growing up from then and all through the 1970s. And disclaimer, it's the way I remember my life. Hello there, welcome to my latest episode of my childhood memories growing up in the 1970s, but also when I was born in the late 60s, remembering my first memories. So this is the most recent episode. Do look at the links below this video. In the description you will see the links to the previous episodes, and look out for more. So continuing with my memories, I do remember the way I was brought up, and this was very much from a tiny baby and being a toddler. My mum was someone who didn't believe in moving ornaments out the way or things that you might pull or break or touch. It was always a case of no, don't touch. And she was quite amused to find that if she took me around to other people's houses where they had children, toddlers themselves, they would have literally cleared their room, their shelves, and low furniture that had ornaments on would all have been cleared away. And as she said, they will never learn. And you might go into someone's house that doesn't have children, and then of course those children will begin touching them and fiddling with stuff. And so I was brought up with a no, don't touch. And even in a shop, if you went to a supermarket and you were sitting in the trolley and she pushed you around, you weren't allowed to touch anything. You certainly weren't allowed to ask for anything. And I was brought up with that common thing of speak when you're spoken to, which is why, as I've said in a previous video, apart from my older sister speaking for me, is why people thought I was a shy child, because I only spoke when I was spoken to, and then I only answered the question they asked. What do I remember about my nicknames that my parents gave me? Now, I'm pretty sure my nicknames were my dad was calling it, and the name that stuck with me, I can only remember being called this, not suddenly being called it. The name was Dewdrop, and Dad called me that till I was quite old. Dewdrop. Not 100% where that comes from, but I'm guessing because my name's Dawn. I don't know, but Dewdrop. And my mum called me that for a long time too. And the other name was, as I've said before, I had real curly ringlets, so I was called Curly Locks. But that didn't last as much. It's always Dewdrop, and I expect my mum still remembers that. Yeah, Dewdrop, that's what I remember. Something else that is a bad memory for me is, obviously my mum was brought up generations before, and it was very much, my mum was a child in the war, in the English Second World War, and it was all about health and vitamin D, and you need vitamin C and these kind of things. So she brought that feeling across to her own children, me and my older sister. And she said we had to have, in those days you didn't have all these little tablets of vitamins. She said we had to have viral every day. Now I've since learned it's some sort of bone marrow thing, but it looked like Nutella. A lot of you know Nutella, that's all I can call it. And it was syrupy but thick and gloopy, just like Nutella. Didn't taste like that. And you would get a giant spoon. She didn't just have a dessert spoon, she had this massive spoon, and she used to put it in, and it smelled and glooped it, and you had to, like I say, just get on with it. There was no talk back. You had to get all of it off the spoon, which was bad enough until she said you have to lick the spoon clean as well, and we had to do that every single day. It is disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. I know my big sister didn't like it, but I don't remember how badly she liked it. She does watch some of these, so put in the comments what your thoughts were to that. And it was disgusting, and we had to have it every single day, not just when we were small, but when we were bigger, we had to have it. And then we also had Del Rosa. Now this was nice. This was for vitamin C. So Del Rosa was a little bit like, I would say, a cordial or a squash, a cordial. And I'm pretty sure you mix that with water. I don't think you had that neat. I might be wrong, but that was nice. And it was, I'm going to get raspberry or strawberry flavour. That was nice. That was okay. So my mum was so insistent these were a thing, and we had to have them. And she said, you'll never get coughs or colds or anything like that. And we always had to have porridge in the winter. I hate cereal, any form of cereal, especially like, it wasn't well made porridge, let's put it that way. It was nasty. We had to have that, or we could have cereal but with hot milk before going out. And I don't like Weetabix, cornflakes, Frosties, anything like that. So I really hated having to do all these things. And as I say, this viral continued until my younger sister was of an age where she would have it as well. And she kicked up a storm, and she said no way was she having that. And from that day, it stopped. We never had viral again. We didn't have Del Rosa anymore. I think we did have that for a little bit more, but then they brought out these little orange like vitamin tablets, and they were vitamin C. And I said, well, how come we don't have to have the viral now? How come my little sister she never had to have that? And my mum said, oh, you have this instead. It covers everything. There were many things that changed due to my little sister. And talking of my little sister, she was born while I was in infant school, the very first school you go to. And I remember I was called up on the stage in assembly when all the classes get together first thing in the morning and sung little hymns and said prayers and all that sort of thing. Wasn't a religious school. That was just how it was in England in those times. Everyone participated. And they called me up on the stage, and I was, why am I going on the stage? And I was quite nervous. I was totally unprepared. And I went up on the stage. I seem to recall Mrs. Rye. If you look at the last episode, you'll know all about Mrs. Rye. And Mrs. Rye said, come on, Dawn, come on. And she took me up there, and I went up on the stage. I remember the little steps up onto the stage. And then she left me on my own up there. I thought, what's going on? And the headmistress, who was not the most child-friendly person, shall we say, and she said, oh, Dawn, she said, we have a big surprise for you. Oh. And then they got from behind the curtain this great big, and I mean great big, basket. Just a basket with a handle, a wicker basket. I'm going to say it was at least this big. It was pretty big. And it was so big I couldn't even hold it. It was that big. And it was full of baby stuff. And she said, we hear you have a new baby sister, and this is for you to take home from everybody at the school for your new baby sister. Now I'm thinking that was some kind of community type thing. I don't know who would have paid for it or where it came from, but they said this is for your baby sister. And I think there might have been a bit of fruit in there for Mum. I don't know. Was there a baby toy in it? A rattle? I don't know. But do you know one thing, and only one thing I remember from this basket, was a great big container of Johnson's baby powder. And I just remember that. And as I said in the last episode, I remember a lot of the toys and things that my baby sister had. So I think some of the memories of them when they were my toys may be from that. But I do definitely remember the baby playpen that I spoke about in the last episode. And I'm pretty sure that had on the side an abacus. So it was inbuilt in part of the playpen, and you could move these 5 or 6 maybe great big beads just up and down, not lots in rows. I seem to recall one of each colour, 4 or 5 maybe there. And I don't remember which house I first remember it in. I don't have any memories of the first house, which was in Brookwood. I don't have any memories at all of that. The second house was in Montpelier Road, Sutton, Surrey in England. Now there, I think I remember the garden. If I'm right, it was quite a small square garden, and the swing which followed us to the next house was in the garden. I'm pretty sure it's the same swing, which you could attach a wooden seat onto it when you was a baby, and then you just unhooked it and put a normal swing seat on it for when you were older. And I'm pretty sure that's the same swing. I might be wrong, it might have been one of these flimsy ones, I don't know. And if I'm right in this memory, the only thing I remember, I don't remember the house there at all. I've got visualizations of wallpaper, but I don't know from what houses they were in the bedrooms. Maybe I remember some wallpapers there, or maybe that's from photos, I don't know. But what I think I remember about the garden was there was an alleyway at the back of it, and Dad used to come home and walk across the back of the alleyway. I think he'd parked his car around the back, I'm guessing, and then he walked along the alleyway behind the garden, and one of our cats used to sit on the edge of the fence and saw Dad and would jump off onto his head and then walk round to the house. My dad would walk with the cat on his head. That's a bizarre memory, but as I say, I don't really remember much else. I seem to remember a red or a red-grey sofa and armchair, but again, this could be from cine film. The only house I really have memories of is the one I left when I was an adult, when I left home, and that house, I'm going to guess we moved there when I was, maybe, I would say still in infant school. I think I was little, and it was being built brand new. And my dad's parents lived right where these houses were being built, and these were being built in a cul-de-sac. Now, it wasn't actually a cul-de-sac, it was allotments, and they built 8 houses with a road down to them on these allotments. So it was allotments, I know that is factual. And so that meant my dad's parents are going to be right near us. And my mum's parents, which was the nan I spent most of the time with, they live fairly nearby, a walkable distance away. But at some point now, my dad's parents, who were nearest, moved to Worthing. So I don't know if or any time that we lived there when they lived round the corner. There must have been a little time span for them to know about these houses being built. But the problem was Brookwood was a long, long way away from Ardley Gardens in Sutton, Surrey. So we were still in Sutton, but another part of Sutton in Surrey. And Mum was so pleased to have a brand new house, but there were delays. There were delays on it being built. I think it was because there was problems with our one. They were being built with real fires in fireplaces, and Mum didn't want that. and when they started building it, they were putting that in, and Dad said, we said no, we don't want that. So I think that was part of the time delay. The other thing I know for a fact, but that I heard later in life, a story from my mum, was that we had our own driveway with a garage, whereas most of those other houses had a garage in the block, but every so many. The first one had their own garage, and a couple of others did, but the rest were in a block. But we had our own driveway with a garage next to the house. And I remember Dad said he went round there one time to see how the build was getting on, and they had put, our house being the last one to be built, number 8, they had put all the rubbish from the construction site in what was going to be our driveway. And I'm not talking rubble, I'm talking about absolute rubbish. And Dad made them take it all out and redo it all properly. So that was a delay. So because we obviously, I think they must have sold the other house then, we went to live with my other nan, my mum's parents, and we went to live with them. I'm going to say just school holiday, one lot of school holidays, again, not 100% sure. But the reason I think this is because Mum was so grateful to them for putting up with us that she didn't want to be in the house with them all the time. And this is why I think it's school holidays, because she would take us to London and other places for the day. So it must have been school holidays. And she took us out and about, so we just came back in the evening. And I remember Mum took picnics for us, and that's my memory. Now, when I'm in this last house, the one in the cul-de-sac, it was 2 bedrooms, and the 3rd bedroom, like many houses in England, was a box bedroom. Very small, very small. But I loved it. I loved it. I remember I chose the colour, and I chose yellow. Yellow was my favourite colour for years and years and years. I don't know why. So I remember it was yellow. I can see the layout of the room. And I remember sitting on my buffet, my little buffet, and it had alphabet on some sides. It had a blue rabbit on the top with the letter R. I think there was a dog, D for dog, K for kettle. Now there's going to be 2 more sides. Can't remember right now what the other 2 sides were, but I remember that buffet, and I had that up until I left England to come to Cyprus. So I remember that. And I remember sitting on there because there wasn't room for a desk or anything. There was just the bed, a dressing table. There was some shelves. I still remember the shelves. And I'll tell you about the wardrobe in a minute. There wasn't room to stand a wardrobe. And I remember sitting on this puffy next to my bed, knitting. That's my memories of that room. The only other big memory I've got of that room, I loved the room, I remember the room, but being in there and playing, I don't think I could have played much in there. There wasn't room. We were allowed to take one toy downstairs, play with it, then if we wanted something else we had to put that away. So I probably played downstairs a lot. So the wardrobe. Now, because this room was over part of the stairs, you know, you have the headroom of stairs when you come upstairs. So there was a big bulkhead, and the wardrobe Dad built on top of that. So it wasn't a full size wardrobe, but it was pretty big. It was pretty big, but I couldn't reach anything in it because the bulkhead would probably be sitting down, probably up to my shoulder height. So I couldn't get in there as a child. So Mum used to have to come and get the clothes out in the morning. But this is my memory of this wardrobe. And if my big sister's watching this, she will remember this. She created this great game that we would open the 2 wardrobe doors. We would sit up on this bulkhead, which stuck out more than the wardrobe cupboard doors. And we would play caravans. You know, horse-drawn caravans, the old-fashioned painted up caravans. We would play caravans. And we had many, many games of caravans. So sometimes we put toys in the caravans. There was room to stand just inside when the wardrobe doors were open before the clothes, and I would go in, stand in there, and I'm just making the dinner, and like a playhouse, but it was a caravan. More time we would sit on the edge and be driving the horses to drive the caravan. So I remember that a great deal. That was probably the game, imaginary game, which we played a lot of, that I remember most of all. The other big memory from around this time was I cut my head open badly, and I still have a little scar here from when I cut it open. And my mother has never been very good at illness or injury, sickness, anything like that. When I cut my head open, and I'll tell you how I did it, this was in this same house. Me and my sister were not running madly, because we weren't allowed to do that, but like messing around. And my mum had pulled an armchair in the lounge up to the coffee table where we were having tea, as in food, sandwiches, tea. And because she had pulled it forward, there wasn't much room between the radiogram, which is a big bit of furniture, the radiogram and her chair. And I caught my foot on the corner of her armchair, tripped over and completely gouged out here. Now it was deep, obviously I've got such a big scar there still. It was deep. So Dad's car had actually broken down at this point. Whether it was in the garage or just not working, I don't know. But I know he didn't have a car. So my mum called my uncle, who happened to be staying with my nan. And he had a painter's van, just a small van, not like the great big white man vans. It was a small van. And he had to come. Luckily, my other nan didn't live too far away. And he came and he took me, my mum and my dad to the hospital. And I remember it was pouring. It was pouring. And when we got to the emergency, the A&E, accident emergency, my mother would not come in to me being stitched up. She would not come in and hold my hand. Now it must have been bad, because my dad came in with me, and I remember he couldn't look at it. Whether that's because I was his child, I was very young, I was in my first year of school when this happened, so I'd only just started school, so I would have been 4 or 5. Whether it was because I was his baby and I was injured, whether it was that or whether it was really bad. I think it was really, really bad that they knew straight away I had to go to a hospital, not sit there, see how it goes. And I remember saying to him, Daddy, Daddy, and he's like, I can hold your hand, Dawn, but I'm just looking at this poster over here. And my dad's not, he wasn't weak like that in any respect, so it must have been really bad. And in those days, they fixed them up differently to how they do now. It was stitches, actual stitches. And I remember thinking I wanted my mummy. But I think that is where my strongest bond with my dad comes from. That, I think, from that day, I knew anyway, but I knew Dad was there for me. So yeah, that was probably that. Oh, and I went to school. It must be a weekend. It was Sunday probably, if we were having tea downstairs like that on the coffee table. And Mum took me to school, and Mrs. Rye said, no, take her home. And Mum said, no, she's fine now. And Mrs. Rye said, no, I cannot have her at school with stitches, because she said, she's sitting on the chair. The chairs were all quite compact, tables and chairs back to back. And she said, if Dawn sort of turned around and looked, and the child sort of had his pencil up thinking, or, you know, an accident can happen. And she said, Dawn is not to come to school until she doesn't have her stitches anymore. Yay! So a bad thing turned into a very good thing for me. I don't know how long it was, but I remember that.